Hello everyone, welcome back to the Film Score podcast. Today my guest is composer Elliot Leung. Elliot is a Chinese composer, and if you're not familiar with him, he burst on the scene a couple years back with his debut film score for Operation Red Sea, which ended up being, at the time, the second highest grossing film in China's history. Now it's been pushed back to around 7th or 8th place. Elliot has since continued to score major Chinese blockbusters, including his latest, which came out this weekend, called Battle at Lake Changjin. This might come as a surprise, but that film, I believe, is actually the highest grossing film worldwide this weekend. Insanely popular and well received in China. Now, I'm not sure if it will receive a wider release in the rest of the world, but I know that Elliot's score is not out yet, but I'm told is going to be coming out soon. Now, given Elliot's style, I expect it to be quite epic in scope, with a mixture of orchestral work and electronics. After all, he is a pianist and cellist, the latter of which I think is his preference. This was actually a lot of fun. Elliot and I didn't know each other beforehand, just exchanging a few messages here and there on Instagram, but a lot of fun in this conversation. I didn't expect to really be talking about things from my childhood like Halo and Pokemon, but who knows what detours a conversation might take. Now, you can find more information about Elliot on his website and also connect with him on social media. Of course, you can do the same for me. A bit of an advanced notice, but as happens sometimes with remote recordings, some of the audio is a bit out of your control. So you'll notice some knocking noises on Elliot's side that I've tried to reduce, but it happens. That said, there's nothing severe enough to really hamper your enjoyment. So sit back and enjoy. I'm so glad you could join me. I know that you've been crazy busy these last, 3 or 4 months since the first time we touched base. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, pleasure.
Cool, man. So I know that you've just wrapped up the Battle at Lake Changjin. It's going to be a big war epic directed by Dante Lam, Tsui Hark, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone else. So that's got to be exciting to work on that.
Director Chen Kaige, so you know the one. There are three.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's a Korean War film. So what's your score going to be like? Can you give us a little sneak preview before it comes out?
The Battle at Lake Changjin. Okay. I approached the score thinking I originally thought I was gonna use Korean traditional elements since it was a Korean war. It was, I think, last year that they approached me and they wanted me to write for it. Back then, I didn't know too much about the Korean War, so I had to do a lot of research to read up on it. And also, coincidentally, ask my dad about it because my dad's a history expert. After I found out much more about it, I decided to ditch the Korean War elements and went with, I suppose I went with what I did best. I like mixing my electronic palette into my orchestra. So I went with a hybrid score that features odd time signatures and off rhythms and such. Mainly, I did that because when I do films with a very, very heavy sound effect department, I like to do things that don't necessarily conflict with the effects department, so like gunshots, explosions. I don't want to do things that sound similar to that department. So then in the mix of the movie, both of us, as in myself and the sound designer and the effects guy, both our work kind of pops up and we don't fight with each other.
That's something I actually noticed watching The Rescue, which is a film that you did about a year and a half or so ago. It has a lot of heavy explosions and sound design, and the score and the sound design has a kind of delicate dance where one will take precedence over the other and then change. Yeah, so I always imagine that that's got to be a tough balance. So what are some of the sounds or instruments or palette specifics that you use to make sure that there isn't that sort of clash?
Oh, wow, good question. The Rescue, we spent a long time mixing the Rescue, and with Dante is a director I worked with for quite some time, and with all the films I write with and for Dante, I'm very heavily involved in the mixing process as well. We would be in the mix room, and I would have my input on the mix as well, whereas some composers don't like to be involved in that creative process. A lot of the way I do things is to, let's say, it's kind of like when you do any kind of calculus kind of problem, you have like a given, these are the elements you have in the scene, and these are the question mark elements, and that's your kind of thing you can create around. So then when I work with my sound designer, he would tell me, hey, this is the kind of sound I want to use for, let's say, like a helicopter propeller. It sounds like something like that. And he would send me a sample, and then I could reimagine that sound and put it in a musical context, or I could work my way around that sound, or I could tell him, hey, can you not use like, say, like the mid-high spectrum, something like that, right? The first way to work around that is to first of all collaborate and work out how much of the sound spectrum you want to take in a particular, let's say, set piece or scene. And the other way was to, let's say, oh, my sound designer, I really need my propellers to be really heavy here. Or let's say in The Rescue, there's a scene in the rapids, I remember. Water was flowing very quickly, there were loose rocks falling, and there were a lot of impact sounds, and the helicopter propeller. So then you kind of have to like piece out, let's say, like when there's a gap in sound, then that's your moment to shine, right? You like pull right in there. Let's say we really need to hear these like clunky rocks falling down in the water, and so that's like a percussive sound, like that kind of sound, right? So then the way I worked around that was I still want to build tension, but then I wouldn't be building tension with very hard-hitting rhythms, so to say. The way I build tension, I could be using some timbral elements in, say, like violin harmonics, glisses, little psycho, like Bernard Herrmann, that kind of stuff. I suppose it's how you work around it, but not a particular sound I use, because there's so many different sounds. There's no one size for all. Oh, use this and you will evade the entire like sound effect department. So yeah.
That's kind of the business of being a composer for film, TV, video games, etc. Like there's not one size fits all for anything.
Yeah. Unfortunately not. Yeah.
One thing you mentioned that caught my attention particularly was mentioning working in the actual mixing. And I know, too, I can't remember if it was Operation Red Sea or The Rescue, or maybe it was both, where Dante had actually brought you in quite early into the production to begin working, too. And I think all of those aspects are pretty rare in film scoring in the US or in the UK, where it's very much a luxury to have more than 6 or 8 weeks. So is that something that's been normal for you, both in your experience and then kind of in the Chinese, Hong Kong film industry broadly?
No, I'd say it's a very, very rare. It's very rare that a director does that. With my other films, that's something I did not do. When you first got in touch with me, I was working on The Battle of Lake Changjin and actually another film as well. So I was on 2 films. That film's released next year in Chinese New Year. So for that film, it was a very standard protocol, so to say. They wrapped cutting, and then they were looking for composers, and then the production company called my agent, and so on and so forth. So pretty standard. With Dante, it's different because Battle of Lake Changjin is our 4th project together. We're working on our 5th one right now, but I can't disclose it right now. But with that kind of partnership, I know very clearly what he likes, what he wants, and that really fits well into what I like and what I want. So that's a very natural thing that I don't take that for granted, and that doesn't happen to everybody. Because he wants me to know the full picture and be very involved. I've never been involved in the films to such a high degree as with The Rescue. So The Rescue, I was involved even before they started writing the script, which is incredibly rare. I think I spent 3 and 4 months on set when they were shooting, and then with the entire post-production in the mix room, and after I recorded in Vienna. Yeah, that's almost unheard of, especially over here. That's unheard of. I'm not sure how it works in the U.S. or the U.K.
That's so cool, and it's awesome that you've not just getting that kind of room to work, but then continuing that relationship with Dante as well. One thing that I was curious about, you mentioning going on set for like 3 or 4 months. And I've heard from different composers, some like that experience and it forms their score. Others couldn't care less about it. For you, what's the benefit of being on set, seeing everything happening versus seeing dailies or seeing it locked to picture however many months later?
I actually quite liked it. I was on set for a few reasons. I was on set because a few scenes were very musically involved in the rescue. So then the actors were actually performing my music live in the picture. So then I had to be there for those scenes, obviously, because it's safer with me around when they're performing my music. If something goes wrong, I'd be the first guy to say, "Hey, we need cut," or something. So I wouldn't say that, but hey, something's not right about with this take, and maybe we should do another one, or maybe we shouldn't keep this one in. So on and so forth. So that was reason number one. Reason number two was there's a very integral part of the script that is very heavily score related. So then the screenwriter actually wrote in the script where Elliot's gonna write a piece here, and that was part of the script. So then that part was tossed to me as we were filming, as we were working on that. I was also writing that part, and I would have meetings with the screenwriter and also Dante to kind of get that part in sync, because if that part's not intact, we can't film it. That's part of the script. So that's reason number two. Reason number three was, we had some ideas of what we want the rescue to sound like musically. Both I had some ideas, Dante had some ideas, but we haven't been able to, at least when we started filming, we haven't been able to pinpoint, hey, okay, this is what it's going to be like. So bringing me on set was also just another way for me and Dante to spend more time with each other, to work on other things. And I brought some simple pieces of my music equipment to set up in my hotel, and Dante would come over and we would talk about music every now and then. The other thing we did was how initially I had some themes written down, so then the cast and some members of the crew, they were able to listen to that and say, oh, okay. So then they had a better picture of what's going on too. And compared to like when I talked to my set designer and all of that, they would tell me, oh, hey, these are the colors I want to use to build this set, you know. And I love colors. That's one of the elements that I really bounce off of and get inspiration from. So then when he's telling me, oh, hey, this scene we're gonna use shades of blue, tints of shades of orange, and hints of maybe, let's say, white. And then I start having maybe some instruments in my head of how I want to pair these colors with instruments and things like that. So the entire process becomes much more collaborative, which I really appreciate, and you feel much closer to the entire production rather than seeing everything on screen and you feel, oh, I'm just writing music, and it's much bigger than that, and I do appreciate that when I was on set.
Well, I think that comes in as far as, because the whole process of making a film is so collaborative. You have hundreds of people and tens of millions of dollars over however many months to create something that's an hour and a half, 2 hours long. It's like a miracle it happens in the first place. So yeah, I totally agree that you can hear it and see it when people are actually allowed to be more involved. I mean, that's crazy because I've never heard any composer be that involved in that many aspects of a film.
Honestly, me too. Yeah.
So I mean, with that, being involved in part of the writing process, hearing about what the set design is going to be like in a particular scene, does it ever get to a point where it's like too many inputs, like it's overwhelming, or is everything a bit more inspiration that feeds your score?
Okay, so it hasn't been overwhelming. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this keeps up and everyone's bombing me with information. I'm not sure it will, but so far it's been fine. The only people who really concretely work on the musical part of the film is obviously me, and Dante has his input. Some other people usually have one-off inputs. Sometimes I listen to them, sometimes I don't. As in collaborative comments in that aspect, It doesn't come from like say like 20 or 500 people. So that keeps it very streamlined and simple. As in terms of looking for other sources of inspiration, I think it was me who asked for these things at first. I asked for what colors he was gonna use. Martin, that's his name. He showed me a few scale models of the set pieces we're gonna be filming in way before we started filming. Essentially, I went into the world he created, and it's like the architect in the Inception. So I was I was in his world. He was showing me around. That was fun for me. It was new for me. I've never worked with a set designer in such a close way because I'm in post production. He's in pre production, and I didn't have any like let's say themes or instruments, so to say, when he was speaking. Maybe like one or two, but then to me it was quite intriguing when he was explaining what he was thinking when he saw the script, like things like that. When the cinematographer was rehearsing his angles and how he has so much poetic movement in some of these shots that I never imagined, and definitely took some of his cinematography movement and I made it into a few phrases of melodic contours following his, let's say it goes up, it very gently flows down, that kind of thing. And I'd say it's been more helpful than it was not, for the most part. I quite enjoyed it. Even some of how one of the actors, her name was Shin Zule, and she was the one I worked closest with. She had to perform a part of my score live, and the way she portrayed the character was completely different of how I thought an actor would. And so then I actually changed her theme after I worked 2-3 months with her. I actually completely scrapped the theme before and I rewrote it because of how differently I thought the character would be portrayed. So that's something that's, I suppose, super helpful on set. I've never spent that much time with the cast. With Shin Jalei, I was basically seeing her every day for like maybe 3 months because you had to learn the part, and and so again, that's super rare, and I've never heard of anything remotely like that.
I haven't either. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons is probably again because it's that level of involvement is so uncommon. You basically have to take whatever comes into your mind first.
Yeah, I agree. Time was a very, very big luxury on the rescue. That was also before the pandemic, so we have more time.
So that's interesting. For you, has it felt like the pandemic has given you less time or made deadlines tighter? Because I've heard it go both ways from composers.
Interesting. Yeah, it definitely made many things tighter for me this year. Mainly because no one knew when cinemas were going to open again. There was a moment where it's safe for everything to open again, and no one knew, like no one could pencil, hey, everything's going to be fine in June or in August. No one was able to say that 4 months earlier. So then we were in post-production, and all of a sudden we would get the notice, we're going to release the film now. And then so everyone's like, oh no. And then so you kind of have to, and it's more than just we need to release a film. You kind of have to see the bigger picture of where if we don't release the film, cinemas have nothing to show. And then it will put the cinemas in a very tough position too. And then so it's more than just, oh, hey, you have no time to do your stuff. You have a bigger role on your hands to fulfill. It's nice to give people something to look forward to and something to watch when they're headed for the holidays. In the brief moment of time, however long it is to, catch a movie. And it's a tradition for a lot of families to catch, let's say, like, let's catch the Blockbuster in, let's say, Mid-Autumn Festival is one of our public holidays, or one of those festivals that's next week. It's like, let's catch a movie with our family. Everyone's with their family, and if there's nothing to watch, then it's kind of like a party killer. And so we had that in mind, and we knew what was going on. So then everyone did their part, and we worked towards that goal.
That's really interesting because that's a big controversy or topic of conversation in the U.S. of the future of theaters and different production companies putting things right on streaming or doing day and date releases where it'll come out in theater and on Netflix on the same day. And yeah, there are all these different different viewpoints and different people have their own personal ambitions to fulfill. So I think it's very interesting that throughout this process, you and it sounds like other people involved in the production, post-production, have that loftier or broader goal in mind of we need to get this out because people need to see it, theaters need to show it. So I don't know, I appreciate that because I think that sort of thing, the bigger impact that film can have on people and society is often forgotten sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I did when I was a kid. Or even that's something I do when I'm like not working on killer deadlines right now. Every weekend I'd be catching a film. I mean, I still need to see Dune. That's released like I think 2 days ago. I need to catch it maybe like next weekend. Most of my childhood was very film heavy, and that's the same with a lot of people here. And a lot of times when filmmakers or even just myself when I work on a film, you forget the impact the film's gonna have, but you forget basically like everyone's gonna watch it. Like the film I just worked on, basically everyone's gonna watch it if they have the opportunity to. So when you kind of think about that as you're working, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I probably should get on working, huh? And I'm not sure how the whole streaming is definitely not playing out as the US, how streaming is playing out over here. People still love the cinema because it's it's a cinematic spectacle. You go to the screen, you go to the cinema, and you have a big screen, you have the great sound system, and I think it's for a lot of families, it's actually and friends, so to say, the cinema is great, and there's also part tradition. There's a big festival. We're supposed to watch a movie. Like we're supposed to go to the cinema, or else it wouldn't feel like we're on holiday or something like that. So that's tradition intertwined into it's part of, I suppose, it's part of culture. And when they stay at home and they go on Netflix, it's not the same, and you don't feel like it's not festive. There you go. That's the word.
It's not festive. It doesn't have that event feeling. Like something.
Yeah, exactly.
In the U.S., like, or I guess hell, it was everywhere. Like Infinity War and Endgame.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I know it's similar in a lot of Chinese productions. Like I remember seeing Wandering Earth or Wolf Warrior 2 came out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting seeing that it came out, like being in the US because it's not here, but I can see like the Douban or Maoyan ratings and like the box office coming in China and like it capturing the zeitgeist and being that big.
Yeah. Those are great movies. I really like The Wandering Earth.
We'll stay on this narrative for a little bit, moving away from some of the pure film music stuff, talking about you seeing movies very often, every weekend you can, going all the way back to your childhood. Like, what are some of the memorable films you saw? Obviously, some of them are going to be coming from, or might be coming from the West, but like, some of them won't be as well.
So I think I had a very strange childhood. My Saturdays, for the longest time, went from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in music school. I was in orchestra, I was playing cello for the most part, and then after 6 p.m. usually I'd go to concerts, so it was 8 to 10 maybe, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So that was like a Saturday was like concert day or music day, and then Sunday would be like, oh, let's catch a film, watch a film, and a film day. As a kid, because I think I've been playing orchestra since I was like 5 years old or something. So then because I was in orchestra so early, all the films I watched on Sunday, obviously I would, because the day before I was in very intensive orchestra, so then the next day I would be, oh hey, look at all these orchestral instruments playing in the film. I remember, I think the first film I managed to do that was The Lion King. That was one of the first films I had. I can still recall being a kid and being able to pinpoint all the instruments and, oh hey, there's a melody here. Obviously I can't use like the terminology I do now, but then I was, hey, look, oh, there's a oboe or whatever. And I ended up watching that a few times. And I didn't know it was called film scoring then. I just thought, there's music that goes with the film and everything managed to sync up, and I thought that was super cool as a kid. And then there are some other movies from Hong Kong then that also had that kind of impact in another way. So I think when I was a kid, a lot of these Disney movies, I watched a lot of Disney movies. That sort of film scoring and song, even sometimes, because like The Little Mermaid, that's like a musical almost. There's so many songs, and I suppose that was like the fun thing to do, but I never really thought I was gonna go into that direction. If I had to pick one as a kid, that definitely would be Lion King.
It's so funny. The Lion King that's the first movie I ever saw in theaters as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I had no musical talent, so I couldn't pinpoint anything. But I'm sure who knows? I've seen that movie a million times. We talked about Wandering Earth really briefly, and I know the composer for that's Rock Chen.
Rock, yeah, it's rock, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one thing that does frustrate me from like the US centric point of view is that so many composers outside of the US and the UK, it's kind of as if they don't exist here. There isn't that sort of inroad. I mean, it sounds a little blunt, but unfortunately it's true.
Yeah.
Like there are tons of like Bollywood composers, for instance, who you go on Spotify and have hundreds of thousands of listens a month, and no one in the US knows who they are. So Rock Chen, I know Leon Ko was actually someone that you had worked with when you were first starting out in film music. Who are some other contemporary Chinese composers that you think people should know about or that you enjoy as well?
Definitely Tan Dun. Tan Dun is, you go into any kind of music environment and you name Tan Dun over here and everyone know who he is. He was the guy who wrote the fantastic score to Hidden, so it's Hidden Tiger, Crouching Dragon. I always mix the English up.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, yeah.
Yeah, there we go, yeah. I always mix it up with the English translation. Yeah, that's a phenomenal score, and I think because of his background, his works are very, very unique. Actually, most of his works are in the concert hall, so he writes for the orchestra, or for ensembles, or for nature elements, for water and rocks, like stuff like that. He stumbled into music by accident, so to say, during the Cultural Revolution back in China, and he was sent to Beijing as part of his duties to follow the Peking opera, and that's when he learned all the music when he was a teen. It was crazy times, and then he somehow kept following the path of music, and he's definitely one of the greatest who has been a composer in China over here. I can't be sure, but I think he is still the head of the Bard College of Music right now. Yeah, definitely him. Leon, I worked for a bit when I first started out. It was cool because with Leon, our approaches to music are very different. And so while he showed me the ropes, I was able to see, oh, okay, this is how we do things in the film industry. This is what needs to be done. All the the logistical stuff, and at the same time see how differently someone views a film and music, completely different from how I would see it. That difference in perspective kind of just showed me how other people, not everybody thinks like you, or this is why stuff I think of is, so to say, unique, or this is why I think this way, and this is why he thinks this way, and it translates into music. But other composers around this premise, I'm not sure how Japanese composers are acquainted in the States or in the UK, but some of them are over there I greatly admire and also take inspiration from, too, in Japan. A gentleman by the name of Toshihiko Hisashi. His works are, I'm not sure if he's still active, but most of his works are, again, works I listened to as a kid. And it's a very orchestral palette with his works over in Japan. I'm not sure how his works are viewed in the US or whether he's known out of Asia. But yeah, Toshihiko Hisashi. I love his works. Very symphonic. I think the London Symphony Orchestra recorded 2 of his scores, I think in 2008.
Yeah, it's tough. I think like Joe Hisaishi's like maybe the most well-known.
Yes, of course, yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I think people in the US might know more Japanese anime or game composers versus like pure film. But I think when you're getting to that point, it's a bit more outside of the normal US audience. For whatever reason, the US is like really weird about animated films. There's a feeling that they're all like, if it's animated, it's for children, at least coming into theaters. And so I just don't think the general audience has...
Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty's not for children.
Well, then, BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
animated shows can be for adults, but like we haven't gotten to the point where animated movies can be, or like anime has that. It's just weird. I don't know. The U.S. it's a weird place, man.
Well, I was actually supposed to come, I think, 2 years ago, but I was stuck in Toronto. That's when the pandemic first happened. I'm still due to come to LA with a few meetings over there. I've been pushing it off with the pandemic, but I think I should be able to come next year. So it's been a long time since I've been back to the US. So I'm kind of looking for. I'm sure it's a completely different animal now, but I'm looking forward to that.
I'm sure it depends where you go, but yeah, I mean, I think it must come as a surprise for a lot of people. And we talked about this before we were recording, that you went to school in the States for a little while, and it wasn't going to like USC or NYU or something. It was going to Wheaton College in about, was it 30 miles west of Chicago. I know you said you get this reaction of people are surprised and wonder why you did it. And when I read that too, I was like, why is someone from Hong Kong going to this university out of every school in the US? And then I found some random interview that you did, and it was because Marty O'Donnell, who had composed the music for Halo, had also gone there. And I loved that. I loved that.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Marty and I are very good friends now. I actually just called him, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. As a kid, or as a teen, that was when I was in my teen years, Halo was a global sensation. That was more than just the US. Everyone around the block was playing Halo. Halo 1 and then Halo 2 and then Halo 3 was a mega hit. When I watch any movie or play any game as a kid, I would naturally just listen to the music as well, because I was a music nerd, as everybody called me. And so Halo was one of those scores where when you're about to give up on something and you think about the first thought of why you were doing all of this, to me, that'd actually be the Halo score, and a very profound impact on my gaming experience. Yeah, therefore I was like, yeah, let's just go there. I mean, obviously I applied to other schools and also got into the NYUs and the USCs, but I like to say the more standard procedure route for for film composers. Yeah, even after I applied to a lot of graduate programs, and most of them were willing to take me, but I decided to not go. But yeah, that's why I went to to. Long story short, that's why I had very little knowledge of the school. I've never been there. I don't know what's around it. I had no intel whatsoever. All I knew was, oh, Marty went there. Okay, we'll be fine. Let's just go there.
I love hearing that, because the Halo score is like the first game, and then all the games afterwards were like phenomena. But man, the music to that first one, I have so many friends who were big gamers, have no real interest in music, and like especially anything orchestral, but they have listened to that score hundreds of times on their own. I mean, it's so cool, the impact of the effect that game can have. And I'm glad that like games are getting more and more appreciation and recognition for their music, because like a lot of the best stuff's coming from that area.
Yeah, I do believe, and in hindsight, it's always easy to say in hindsight, but you can see how everything in, not just music actually, in the entire audio department in Halo had shaped the gaming industry and the audio sound to come after, where we came from 8-bit and all of that into, monks chanting, and you see these people who will literally, I mean, it's not just in the US. My gamer friends here, or whatever, heavy metal alternative rock they listen to, and then all of a sudden they'd be singing the monk chant, and I would be telling them, hey, that's a Gregorian chant, right? What's a Gregorian chant? And and then like you said, all of a sudden everyone would start to have interest. All the guys would be humming that in the boys' bathroom in school, and it became global. It had a very profound impact even over here across the Pacific. Believe it or not, that movement, I was one of the kids that were, well, not kid then, I was one of the teens that were impacted by that movement. And then I said, hey, somebody wrote this, I could be that somebody. And that's how the path kind of unfolded.
Is it surreal now, not just having met Marty, but like being a personal friend with him? Had you told your teen self that, would you have been like, no way?
Oh, definitely, no way. If I was when I was a teen. You know, you never think of things so far, and like things are so small. Your world is so small when you're a teen. You would never be thinking on that scale ever. I mean, give credit to those teens who are already thinking on that scale, but I definitely was not one of them. But I think when I first met Marty, it definitely had that moment of I told her, I probably know your music better than you do. And then Marty gave me a few lessons, and back in the day, that was way before I did Red Sea. I was writing music then, and Marty would be giving me some very good critique. So I suppose, yeah, when I was first, we weren't on that friendship relationship, that kind of, yeah, I was still kind of student teacher relationship then. That was already surreal enough for me. I remember bringing my little Halo 2 CD for him to sign, and then after a while we became friends. Marty, essentially back in the day, Marty gave me a checklist of what I should be doing if I really wanted to make it. I just kind of followed that checklist and did a lot of things. Now, the checklist wasn't, okay, go do this, do this, as this is how you should be mentally thinking. This is what you should be doing with your free time. It's that kind of thing, because as we all know, there's no one-size checklist of how to be a film composer. But there are things you can do to help yourself be in a better position. So then those are the things Marty told me I should be doing. And I did all of that, and here I am. And so, yeah, he helped me quite a bit. And we have he's obviously not over here, so then it would be on FaceTime or Discord, and we'd be either talking about music or just, joking around, having a good time. No. Yeah.
I love it. That's so cool. I don't want you to give away any of your secrets of success, but is there anything from the checklist that you can share?
So I'd say when I was 14 or 15, something like that, that was when I first had the thought of, okay, I think I want to be a film composer. Prior to that, I actually wanted to be a conductor for the longest time, because I was an orchestra nerd. I remember in first grade a very common thing we had to do in grade school was to write down what you want to be when you grow up. And then so in first grade, I wrote down I wanted to be a conductor, because when I was in the orchestra, then the guy waving his arms looked like he was cool, and and I wanted to be that guy. So then I suppose I was in music I was studying music for the longest time, and I put all the eggs in one basket, and that was music for me. Until I realized, and when I was 14 or 15, someone has to write this kind of stuff. And that seemed like it was cooler than being a conductor while still being musically related. And it kind of ties into my love for film and gaming. So I was like, yeah, I probably should do that instead. So when I made that decision, I read up on other resources online, or basically everything I read up on, and everyone, musician or not, was telling me, it's basically impossible. It's very difficult to do. And then I was like, okay, well, that was kind of scary. That I suppose that I didn't give up, because I told myself that, I still have time, and I really don't have much to lose. So then it's very stubborn for me to say, but I really did put all my eggs into one basket, and I didn't have another, fail-safe plan. It was just, I'll do everything I can in my ability to at least prepare myself for an audition or something for when the one opportunity comes, because you really only get one shot. I got one shot to land. My breakout film was Operation Red Sea, and that was a huge success over here. But I had one shot to land that, and if you fail that one shot, then people would start knowing who you are as a guy who failed his one shot, and you won't get films to come. So I knew very early on that I really wanted to make my first impression very strong, and so my college housemates would tell you the same, but I'd be just always in the basement. They wouldn't know how. They would just tell me, he's in the basement, he's in the basement. I would be score studying to Stravinsky, a composer I really, really liked. Stravinsky or Rachmaninoff. I was taking their scores, and this is one thing in Wheaton I really got out of was most of my classes was just me and my professor. And then so when I was studying these scores, the next day I would bring to my professor, and then we'd be just talking about these scores, and then I'd read more on these scores. So it becomes a very individualized thing for me, at least. But because of all these circumstances, it drove me into a very antisocial kind of life where I kept on preparing myself more than I should be. I was a big gamer when I was a kid, and this is one analogy I always told some of my friends. So I'm not sure if people play Pokemon in the States. Pokemon is a game I play. I don't play anymore, but I played up to, I think, like Generation 4 or something. Back then when you play on a Game Boy, you would always, all of my friends, the point of the Pokemon, for everyone who doesn't know what it is you have a team of Pokemon, of these guys on your team, and you fight the champion, you overtake the champion. And when you beat the champion, you basically win the game, right? So then you would always overtrain, train to reach a higher level than you were recommended to make so that you can, you're certain that you can beat the champion. So, that kind of logic of Pokemon gaming, that's kind of like the motto. As a kid, as a kid who didn't know much, at least I knew that. At least I knew that okay, I should over-prepare myself. And if you have, as a kid, when you play Pokemon, if you didn't know what to do, you just go in the wild and you train. You just, and that's what you did. And, there's so much repertoire in music that there's so much good stuff over there that you might not necessarily come across when you just study in a course. And once you attain the knowledge of, okay, this is how you break down a piece, and this is actually what the composer's thinking when he wrote these things, when he paired, let's say, the violas and the high register of the oboe together. This is what he was thinking. And when you approach other repertoire you didn't know, then that's kind of what I did. And a statistic I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure if it's right, but I was told that about 70% of the film industry have their jobs because they have a prior connection to the film industry. Let's say my dad's Brad Pitt or something like that. And the 30% is the rest of the world, and you try to fight for that 30%, whatever post you are. And film composers is one of the many roles in the film industry. Again, I'm not sure if that's true, but these kind of scary statistics and everyone telling me how hard it is, it was just kind of like motivation for me to, you better work harder because, it's very tough. And I was warned early on, so I was kind of mentally prepared how hard it was. And lo and behold, yeah, it was pretty hard, but then, we got through that. And so yeah, I'm talking about it now.
Yeah, and whether or not that's true, the principle remains the same. But I've got to say, yeah, Pokemon, I remember when it came out on Game Boy in the mid or late 90s in the US, and it was massive. I had it and everyone I know had it, and then...
Oh, okay.
I think it's still pretty popular. I never expected that anyone to ever hear a Pokemon analogy for film scoring, but you know what? It's really apt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was more of a Final Fantasy guy as far as the overtraining, but...
Sure, same principles. Same principles, yeah. Yeah.
So, look, Elliot, I hate to end this now, but it's getting late for me. I need to go to bed. My wife's probably wondering where the hell I am. But I appreciate you joining me so much, and I'm looking forward to the release of the Battle of Lake Changjin. Who knows whether it'll get a release in the U.S., but hopefully at some point.
Pleasure. I really enjoyed talking about it, and there was a lot of surprises along the way. So, yeah.
All right. Well, you take care. Monday morning for you, so you've got the whole week ahead of you.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Enjoy not having the crushing deadlines for the moment.
Yeah.